Good morning, chess friends. This is International Master Levy Rozman. This is the Chess.com live streaming channel. I don't know, I've never done an intro that way. Sorry. It's early here in New York. Already see various chats across different platforms getting into it. Well, I guess first and foremost, as the, global health crisis continues to develop, hoping you're all healthy, hoping you're all doing okay, enjoying your time at home, watching the candidates, because it's really the only chess tournament out there that's happening over the board. For better or for worse, obviously. We've seen in the past few rounds 4, 5, and 6, like various players have voiced their concerns, namely Alexander Grischuk and Ian Nepomniachtchi have been very vocal about this tournament happening, this tournament continuing. So we'll talk about a little bit about that today. But we're obviously also going to focus on the chess. I've pulled up several rounds from the past, several games from the past few rounds, like rounds 4, 5, and 6, and we'll find some of the key moments. Last time we did the rest of the recap, we really only focused on the decisive games, so the games that had a winner and a loser, because those are more fun and have more implications in the standings. Today we will look at some draws maybe as well, because there have been some exciting moments, even when games have not necessarily ended in a decisive result. So, depending on where you are in the world, I see some people already talking about, Grischuk is going to win, Nepo is going to win. Somebody said Duda is going to win, but I don't think that that person is fully aware of the participants of the tournament, or you're trolling. I'm going to hope for it is the second one. Or you're just planning for the future. Duda will win the next candidates. I think the next candidates will be exciting, but let's focus on this one. Duda, Ali Reza, maybe Zhang. Who knows who's going to end up there. They should do it Tara Steele style. You haven't had a chance? All right, come on up. The standings are currently as follows. Ian Nepomniachtchi is in crushing form. He's on +3, which means in chess terms that he has won 3 more games than he's lost. So he's got 3 wins, 0 losses, and 3 draws. He's undefeated, and he's got 4.5 out of 6, which is a huge score. MVL is in second with 3.5. And by the way, can we just address that real quick? I mean, there's all this talk about how Maxime Vachier-Lagrave was supposed to be underprepared for the tournament because he didn't have a lot of time, and because of her job was. Guy's like +1. He's made a bunch of draws. He's won a game. He's 3.5. He's only a point behind. More on that later. He's going to have a chance to be tied for first soon. Then we have a cluster of guys who have 3. So we have players like Fabiano, Anish, Wang Hao, and Grischuk, who've got 3 points. And then we've got the bottom. We've got the little dungeon of players. And before the tournament, if I told you that after 6 rounds, Ding Liren would have 2 points, you would think I was an idiot. You would be right, but not because I told you the thing about Ding Liren. I'm just an idiot. Ding Liren is on -3. He has lost 3 chess games out of 6. Okay? And to put that into perspective, Ding had not lost a game in 100 games. And now he's lost 3 in 6. A lot of things contribute to this. His preparation might have not been at its highest form. He might not be in peak physical or emotional or mental condition, given everything that's going on. So, Ding has 2 points out of 6. And the other player is Kirill Alekseenko. And if I told you that Alekseenko would have 2 out of 6, you'd say, okay, that's pretty reasonable. He almost had 2.5. So, but he obviously was ultimately defeated by Anish Giri, and that was that. So, let's jump into the games then. We'll start in round number 4, the game between MVL and Grischuk. Now, this game is important for a lot of reasons. Roland and I, in our previous rest day recap, said that this game would be one of the more exciting games. It turned out to not really be the case. You know, when you get MVL with white, you get e4. We predicted that Grischuk will go for a Sicilian. That didn't happen. Grischuk went back to his Berlin defense when, in the Ruy Lopez, you take in the center. And then white, you know, recently has been testing out rook e1. There's also d4 is the old main line. We're not going to talk about the intricacies of the Berlin, because if you'd like to do that, there's 10-hour courses out there on it, probably, and you will probably never even fully master it. It's a very dense and complicated middle game jungle of piece placement, pawn structure, and a whole variety of, you know, different setups and plans. So Grischuk opts back for this king e8 line with this setup for black, and it's like I said, black can play in a variety of ways, as well as white. There's various Berlin setups where sometimes white plays h3, and like depends on where white will set up his two knights and bishop. Obviously, his light squared bishop has been traded very early, and then you decide how you're going to trade here and the way you're going to place your rooks and your pawns. Ultimately, MVL chooses this. And what was interesting about this is that everything up until around here, MVL has played before, which I thought was hilarious. And I thought it was hilarious because when I tuned into the game in the morning, at this very moment, Alexander Grischuk was down like 45 minutes on the clock. I forgot on what move exactly he spent all his time, but like right here, Grischuk was down like 30-40 minutes already in a position that MVL has played before with white. So it's in the database. I could have prepared for this game. And that just goes to show you, what on earth is Alexander Grischuk thinking about? I mean, I truly don't know. I don't know how to hypothesize. I don't know. I really don't. Is he trying to just remember the right variations? But why does that take 40 minutes? You know? And then the weirdest thing about Grischuk is that after the game, he always talks about how he knew he spent too much time. That always amazed me. He's like, I know that when I'm thinking about my moves, I'm spending too much time, but I do it anyway. Isn't that quite literally the definition of insanity? I mean, having said that, Grischuk has 6 draws. He hasn't lost the game. He's doing quite well in the tournament. So, yeah, I like that comment someone just pointed out. Someone said it just takes a while for his caffeine to kick in. Yeah, he's made a joke a few times, like I've been sleeping at the board. Who knows? You know, who knows? Really. And again, the density of the variations in the position, you can plug in a million different moves. Black can play rook d8, rook g6. That's obviously why he did this. He goes for bishop b4 and messing up this pawn structure. And he played h4 with the intention of playing, you know, g4. Not of playing, excuse me, of stopping g4. That's really the whole idea. You play h4 so that, you know, you're controlling the g-pawn thrust, and you don't allow the pawn, the g-pawn to come forward. Having said that, MVL plays g4 in the next move anyway. So, and then Grischuk moves the knight back to e7, increases pressure on h3, and the knight is trying to come to d5. You know, on the surface level, this position actually, I kind of like it for black. I don't know. I don't know anything about the Berlin. Just optically speaking, it seems like black has a much better pawn structure. White's a little bit more active in the center, and his king is a bit safer. This king is a bit stuck, and maybe playing rook d8 will actually be kind of difficult. You know, maybe you'll have some problems here, tactical problems, because of the discovered attack. So, after a little bit of shuffling here, you know, knight d5 and bishop c1, this, again, it's like white needs to sacrifice some of these ugly pawns to maintain some level of initiative in the position. And that's exactly what happens. Grischuk takes the pawn and plays knight a4. And it was right around here where the initiative started going into MVL's favor. Grischuk took the pawn, and, you know, it's move 21. So if anybody is unfamiliar with the territory of the tournament, the logistical elements of the tournament, the players have 3 time controls. They get an initial time, then they get bonus time, and then on move 60, they get even more time. I mean, if that's not arrogance, I don't know what is. The whole point is that, you know, you need to use your time effectively, but these guys just get, you know, we're bailing them out like big corporations here in America. We're bailing them out of time trouble. And you know who benefits the most from this? Actually, no. I was going to say Alexander Grischuk might benefit the most from the extra time. I don't even think that's true. I somehow think that when Grischuk has to make a move in 5 seconds, he just plays the best move. Doesn't overthink anything. And so somebody said why knight a4 here instead of knight d5? You know, maybe Grischuk was not a fan of the f file getting a little bit of pressure. I don't know. He puts his knight on a4 because maybe this plan allows the bishop to stand on d5. You know, maybe he didn't like his knight on d5 because it would be getting in the way of the bishop, and the bishop would be a target on e6. A lot of different tactical moments where you can maybe take the bishop or take the pawn with an attack on the rook. I'm just hypothesizing. I didn't ask Alexander. That's the only thing I can imagine. You know, maybe he wanted the bishop here, and then he figured the knight would make it back to e6, or the knight would make it back. Yeah, that's probably the only square. Maybe e4 if control is lost over e4. Like I said, Berlin is a super complicated maze of, you know, the best squares to put the pieces on. It's almost a terrible opening to play if you're Alexander Grischuk, because there's so many different setups that you could take with your pieces, right? And he's just going to spend all his time. I mean, if you play like a Caruana, or, you know, if you play like a bad opening, you're treading a fine line between winning and losing. So, or losing and not losing, I probably should say. So, you know, we get rook f4, knight b6, rook f1. Nothing complicated here from MVL. Now here, a very nice tactical defense of the g3 pawn. It's very clear that white is, you know, basically all lined up. And, you know, you can't play a move like long castles because it's literally illegal. You've already moved your king very early in the game. Let's not forget. So, you know, don't do this, because then it's touch move, and then you have to move the king. So that would be very bad. So he plays rook g6, which tactically defends g3. So if we get knight f7, we get rook g3, then the rook is coming to g2 with check. So if here, excuse me, this is an illegal move. If here or here, then we have rook g2. This is hanging, that's a problem. And this knight doesn't actually cause black any harm. I mean, he can't really move it anywhere. And he doesn't have rook f8 as an issue, because the knight actually does defend rook. So these are all elements of the different layers of black's position. After rook g6, though, Grischuk, you know, just defends the knight. This one confused me a little bit, but, you know, maybe he wanted to play h5, which he did play later in the game. He can't play h5 at the moment. He would be hanging his knight. Very important lesson. I know we're talking about the intricacies of the Berlin defense here, and we're also talking about, you know, 27, 70 level chess, but if you push a pawn, sometimes the corresponding piece no longer has a guard. So that's why pawn to h5 is impossible. Rook f5, bishop c4. Now you've got to move the rook because it's hanging. King e7, h5, rook h6, and g4. So again, for the cost of one pawn, MVL has a lot of activity, a lot. And if you try to evaluate this position without using a computer, you turn the computer off and you just try to use the little system to determine who's a better position. There's like 4 points, generally, the way we think about this. This is going to be a good lesson for some of you. Number 1 is material. Number 2 is king safety. They're in a tier of their own. And then things like piece activity and pawn structure and space. So material, black is up a pawn. That's actually important, because black can consolidate and then ultimately be fine and just be better in the endgame, if that were to happen. But king safety, I would argue that black's king is significantly less safe. It can be targeted very easily by the dark squared bishop that white has. It's very direct lines right now open to the king on f7 and e6. Piece activity, white has, I would say, maybe a slight advantage. It looks more impressive than it is, like with the pressure here, but black is defending very well, and this bishop's not particularly playing. And then pawn structure and space, obviously white does have that, but, you know, the counterbalance measure to that is I would say that, well, you can have a bunch of space with pawns, but then you have to be ready for counterattack, like g6, like different piece maneuvers to strike back. G6 is the only pawn break, and it's might not even be that good, because if you play g6, you kind of allow yourself to be pinned. You know, that might also be a problem. But of course, with moves like knight d7 always available to kick the knight out, the rook out, maybe it's not so bad. And so ultimately, you look at this position and you say, well, white is down a pawn, but his position's quite nice, so he's definitely got compensation. But if black consolidates, then he's going to be okay. And that's really exactly what Grischuk did. He tried his best to consolidate. He moves his rook out of the way here of the discovered attack. But here, MVL finds a very nice idea. This is called a clearance sacrifice. And it's basically when you want to get to a square, but there's no way to get to that square unless you sacrifice what's on it. And normally you do this with a pawn, because sacrificing a piece means you have to win more back. Or you got to win back a knight or a bishop if you or a rook or something. So Grischuk here, already being in a very deep time trouble, I think already down to several minutes, had to drop the bishop back attacking the rook, anticipate a5, and play knight d5. So the other thing about bishop a3 coming is that if it is to happen successfully, then white is just very clearly better, because every piece he has is playing. He's also now using the pawn and the bishop to lock down the queenside pawns. It's kind of the thing about these 4 Berlin pawns is they can be immobilized sometimes, just based on the way they're set up. Anytime one of them moves, another one will get weaker. So after knight a4, here MVL continued with the plan of bishop a3, c5, and went for e6. But unfortunately for him, here he had a winning move, which is not even immediately obvious to the computer. At least not to mine. Maybe you guys have stronger engines, and I don't even remember who was the first to point this out. But at this point, you know, chess is a bit of an arms race to find out which grandmaster missed which win at high level, which we will see later. Here MVL had rook e4, which on surface level looks extremely strong because it's an X-ray, and now we're going to see the full effects of it. So if black plays knight b6, right, just bringing the knight back, now bishop a3 is a different story, because after king d7, you have two things. Number one, you have e6, and for instance, if fe6, the bishop is now blocked from f7, so rook f7, and the black king is reduced to this. Now the rook is not playing, and for the cost of now 3 pawns, white has a dominant attack. He plays knight e6, he's threatening rook c7, and I mean, this is a hopeless endgame, just because of how passive this guy is. If you try to move your knight here and then escape like this, there's a way for me to keep your king locked in on the queen side, but just win all your king side pawns. So I take on g7, and then I get this, and even though I'm still down a pawn, the looming threat of my pawns advancing is game over. That's one way. You know, we looked at so, and again, when you calculate all this, at what point do you say, all right, I'm ready to play my move? All you calculated was knight b6, and not to mention, all you calculated here was fe6. You also have to look at bishop e6, and here it's more of the same. You have to take the bishop and play rook f7, reducing the king to a very, very passive position. But are you ready to play rook e4? No, because the only thing that you looked at is knight b6. See, this is where getting into the thought process of a person in chess is super important. Just because you looked at knight b6 does not mean that you're ready to play the move rook e4. You still need to try to prove yourself incorrect. So now what about b5? Well, now we see the second idea of the move rook e4. It's actually to just take this bishop. In a lot of these lines, you're sacrificing material to break in and use an overwhelming army to shut down your opponent. So bc4, rook f7, king e8, and then probably either bishop a3 or e6. I mean, they're both very strong. You can also just take this pawn. And now we just see the full power here. Is that black has a huge pawn advantage with material, but I mean, this is hopeless. This is hopeless. These pawns are never getting anywhere. You know, the dark squared bishop is a killer. Maybe e6 is not even the best move. Maybe bishop a3 to go rook e7 is even stronger. That's why b5 doesn't work, which brings us to our final point. If neither of these moves work, defending, what do you play in a situation where you can't defend? So what you have to do is play bishop e6. And the reason you have to play this move is because you have to exceed the danger level that is being caused to you. So if your bishop or knight is under attack, you can put a rook under attack because it's worth more. And now if rook a4, bishop f5, you know, pawn f5 is actually very risky since rook h5 happens. And now we see kind of the difference. The difference here is that even though this king is very passive, the rook, the knight, the bishop, they're not actually in on the 7th rank, causing any trouble. Right now, the rook is still pressuring the knight, the pawns, and there's no easy way to defend. You probably have to play something like rook g4, and then black just gets the second rook in the game. So that's really the difference here. And here, the best thing to play would have been knight e6. And after knight e6, there's, I think, 2 different things that black can play, if I'm not mistaken. First of all, there is the in-between move knight c3, which is just a ridiculous move. And then here, rook e3 does this. After f takes e6, you play bishop a3. Check. Let's not forget we can't take the knight because our rook is hanging. So we force the king back because that was the whole plan. We play rook g5. Knight d5 attacking the rook. Rook f3, only move to keep the advantage to maintain this pressure. And now we see again, white is down 2 pawns, but black is extremely passive. And now we're threatening to take and put the second rook here and run crazy on the 7th rank. So, which brings me, I think, to my last point, where instead of knight c3, you can also take like this, but in this position, either bishop a3 or bishop g5, suffice to say, are good for an advantage, because once again, you have reduced the king to nothing, and the pressure on these files is extremely problematic for black. For example, rook f3, and there's still this, so now with b5, rook e f4, and we see the power of white's rooks. White is not allowing black to trade on either of the open files. He's threatening rook f7, and this is going to be a tall task defensively. So here, 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 and something like this. This is just lost again because of because of these 2 pawns. And I think when you let the engine run on a high depth I would say is anything above 30, it very quickly realizes, well, quickly depends on your processor power, but it realizes how good white's position is. And that white is just simply crushing here. These pawns are nowhere near fast enough compared to these rooks, with this kind of stuff looming. But MVL didn't play that. I don't know what he missed. It could have been, and I don't know the timestamp, it could have been a time trouble kind of thing. My opponent's low on time, so I gotta play fast. And he was trying to put Grischuk away, but very quickly we had what usually happens at the highest level of chess, simplifications. A lot of, messy rook maneuvering, but here we see the power of the pawns, simplification, and this is simply in time to hold the pawn. And so the players traded and got down to this position. A missed chance for MVL. He could have had 4 points. Could have been on +2, but it is what it is. That's what the candidates is all about. And, he'll probably be happy with his play, given that he hasn't had a whole lot of time here to prepare. Having said that, I don't actually, I have no idea if that's true or not. MVL could well have been preparing for weeks. And, just to keep himself sharp and, what if. But I guess when you're a professional chess player, you don't necessarily come out of form just because you're not actually preparing for the tournament. Let's move to round 5, where first we're going to look at Anish Giri versus Fabiano Caruana. The game heard around the world. That final position cannot be won by white. King and pawn versus king and pawn cannot be won by white. Anish Giri took on Fabiano. And Fabiano continued to play the Slav. And the first game that Fabi played the Slav, he lost to Ding Liren. But it shows you that he's come fully prepared. He's locked and loaded in the Slav. And this will be exciting. It's going to be exciting. It's going to definitely cause a bit of an openings uproar. Anytime that these 2,800 level players repeat the same openings several times, it means they've done their work. And then we have to start now doing the digging, because they're not gonna publish their answers. I apologize, there's very loud noise outside. Being a New Yorker, you know, New York is like the epicenter of what's going on in terms of coronavirus testing and positive cases and treatment and everything. And yet our construction is full bloom, which is just very strange because we're literally supposed to be in lockdown. Anyway, quick rant. The E3 Slav, you know, compared to the Knight C3 or the G3 or whatever, the E3 Slav is supposed to be white's kind of go-to small advantage variation against the Slav defense. That's what it's supposed to be. They're just playing on the fact that this knight is pretty passive, and all white has to do is just kind of slowly improve his position. But for a variation that's called the quiet or the slow Slav, it gets pretty insane pretty quickly. And it gets pretty insane because of the following variation. Knight h4, bishop e4, saying, you know, if you take the bishop, I'm just going to go here and your knight's not going to have any squares. f3, bishop g6, bishop d2, and this kind of a weird structure with these kinds of pawns. I used to play this in the past by putting pressure on this pawn, and this is still pretty quiet, but it's just a very comfortable advantage for white. So knight d7, queenside castle, knight, I think right here is the novelty moment. Fabiano plays knight b6. The players were playing a game that followed Constantine Lupulescu versus Bu Zhangji, I think. And those two played this exact position at the Grand Swiss. Sponsored by Chess.com, yay. Organized and completely, basically, the brainchild of Chess.com. Love you, Danny, and team. And they played this variation in October 2019. There was this position, and Bu Zhangji, I believe, continued to queen c7. I think that was the game. Lupulescu. Yes, Romanian Grandmaster. But Fabi plays knight b6, which means that Fabi knows what he's doing. Okay, he knows what he's doing. But it became very quick to tell that despite Fabi knowing what he's doing, he got a very bad position. So c5, knight d7, king b1, h4, and the reason you play h4 is just to stop g5 and to basically take free space. That's what you want. And white is just trying to get a big space advantage. At some point, black is going to play b6 or e5. It's going to play one of these two moves to try to take some space, to try to fight back, because otherwise he just really can't move any pieces. And white will just run him over. So we see g5 now as a tactical opportunity. Bishop e1, g4, e4, pawn takes, and b6. And position is already very complicated. There's a lot of tension between the pawns. As well, you know, you've got to think about it in this way. If the position opens up, who's going to be happier? The guy with 2 bishops or the guy with 1 bishop? That's a very basic breakdown. So we see Giri go for the more principled approach. Takes. Let me open up the position a little bit. And now I've just got to figure out where to position my pieces. Now, sometimes to position your pieces in an advantageous way, you've got to position them backwards first. Because right now, this knight can't go anywhere. You know? Can't go forward. I don't know how it's going to get forward. The bishops can go forward, but my favorite thing is when people suggest moves like this. Because it's like, well, the bishop was controlling all of those squares from back here. The bishop is like the lazy person on the beach chair letting the dog run around the front yard. Like, as long as you maintain eyes on the dog, you don't have to walk it, you know? It'll walk itself. Now, the bishop can do its job from f1 on this diagonal. So if you move the bishop... Oh, excuse me. I just gave away the move of the game. The bishop does the exact same job on this square. And on this diagonal, it's not really increasing anything, any sort of pressure at all, because there is nothing here. It's all empty squares. So, queen a7, b3, knight h5, knight g3. Giri offers a trade of knights to try to activate his dark squared bishop. Of course, his bishop will be significantly better on this square. This is a very good diagonal to control, especially given that the king is still in the center. Right, Fabi's king actually never castled. Spoiler alert. After takes f4, the idea of f4 is not to demonstrate to your opponent that you know how pawns move, although that, I suppose, is an admirable mission. It's to play bishop e2. Could he have played bishop e2 first and then f4? Maybe. But he plays f4 to also keep in mind that once the rook gets off the control of the f5 square, you can play f5. And you'd like to play f5 and make that trade because you're getting closer to the enemy king. Right now, Fabiano's position is a bit scattered. You let the computer run here on a high depth. Once again, it tells you that white is very, very comfortably better. White has a very, very nice advantage. And after king f8, bishop e2 and bishop d3 with the intention of playing f5, we see white's advantage take full effect. So c5, which again, it seems like Fabi's pushing to open the position, but Giri's the guy with the bishops. So look, I mean, we just took the bishops from e1 and f1 to this. Like, these are absolutely beautiful bishops. So it's like, why would you voluntarily open the lines? And I guess this was Fabi's way of trying to create some counterplay, a little bit of chaos, but he doesn't have anything here. He doesn't have any pressure on a2. At this point, he's playing the simplifying game. And we get to this position. And now the big question is, how does white, break in here? And the answer to that question is you have to use a pawn. You have to use f5 to force open the f-file. So pawn takes f5, bishop takes f5, and now the f-file is open. And it really feels like right here, like the move b5 does not strike me as particularly strong. And it's weird to sit here and criticize Fabiano Caruana, right? I mean, he's the #2 player in the world. But what is black doing? Right? Like, what is this? The only thing this does is open the queen's diagonal. So maybe he was stopping queen f2. Maybe that's what his idea was. But still, though, finding the winning line here is very difficult. Very, very difficult. You would think, I'll just go rook f1 and then I steamroll him on the f-file. Yeah, but if you play rook f1, you have to be prepared for losing a pawn. And, is this actually going to pay off, or are you just going to lose a pawn? Then you might play something like, I don't know. You can't move your queen too far because of queen a2. So let's say you play queen b2 with pressure on the knight. All right, then black's going to play d4. Your investment of a pawn just backfired because you got your queen blocked. So I believe, when just give you the full solution, I think here white can play h5. Just saying, all right, you push a pawn, I push a pawn. And if this trade is to happen, then after queen h2, there's problems. Knight f6 and rook e1, and I'm threatening all sorts of different mates. So I force you to play knight g8 to stop queen h6. Check here. I can't take because of a2, but maybe I can play something like a4. And if you take, now I have some sort of checkmate ideas. Like, for example, queen g3, king f8. No. I was gonna say rook g1. Yeah, actually, just rook g1. I think rook g1 just works. So queen g7, queen g8 are a threat. And then, obviously, sacrificing would be good for white. But So you can play h5 and basically just play if he doesn't take h6 and h7, and I mean this is crushing at this point because the rook is no longer playing. So in the game that didn't happen. In the game, Giri got his supremely dominant position, and then the memes wrote themselves. Anish played rook h2. A flexible move, trying to see where you want to end up on the second rank, potentially. I don't really know what else this move does. This almost looks like a mouse slip. And then this, and I saw somebody already wrote it in the chat. This is the move heard around the world, which threw away White's advantage. I think even here, White had moves like rook g2, which were better, but it's difficult to decide why rook g2 is better than rook e2, you know? Again, like, are you trying to go rook here and something there? Are you trying to play rook g5 and go for a trade so you can get in with the pawn? It's not... it's not so easy to really come up with... It's very easy to watch a recap of the game done by someone and go, oh yeah, like I totally understand. I mean, obviously rook g2 is better because of all these different ideas. But, you know, he played rook e2. I don't know why he played rook e2. I guess his idea was to go rook e5 after d4. Oh, sorry, that's not what he played. But, again, I don't know. I don't know. And he probably did a press conference and talked about his thoughts a little bit on the game, but I'm sure White knew at this point that he was winning, but slowly your hopes start to dwindle when you can't tell the difference between which rook move is better in the long run. Rook f2 over rook g2 does strike me as a bit more natural, because it does line up the rook on the king. But yeah, it's one of these two moves, and then... But the problem is, you know, black can still defend things, I think, with like rook h6. If you play queen d2 targeting this guy, again, you've always gotta remember there is the h-pawn investment. You're gonna lose the h-pawn, you have to find a way to win. And who knows, right? If you're Anish, do you want to invest the pawn? You can also play rook e. Yeah, you know, you do also have this, just kind of very simply, and then maybe moving the bishop back or playing queen c3. And they're calling an ambulance outside for Fabi's position. Yeah, maybe just improving on the f-file would have been the way to go. But after rook e2 and then this little rook maneuver, it's such a fascinating rook maneuver. And then you know what's even crazier? He moved it again. Anish moved his rook 4 times in a row and then traded it. Is that not crazy? You move a piece 5 times in a row. You touch no other pieces, and then it's gone. It's almost as if... You know, it's just almost as if it didn't happen in the first place. So yeah, it's exactly what happened. Look, like, I mean, he played rook h2, rook e2, rook e5, rook c5, rook c8. Right? Like, in a row. It's so strange. I even teach this to my young students. Like, don't play the same piece move too many times. You can't go to war with one piece. This is like, you know, this is like that rook was basically the ugly duckling, you know, in the group, and he just wanted a little bit of attention, so he went on a stroll. No, he of course saw that the fork was coming. He just decided that that was his idea. And even here, he might have thought, well, I'm better because, you know, the king is in the center, but you get to this position and you just realize there's nothing. Rook c1 to try to play rook c7, and then here just a very simple and strong knight d5. And there's nothing here, you know? You can get all up close and personal like this. Like, oh, I'm gonna get you, but there's no check. There's no check. You know, I'll give this position to some students, and they're gonna say, you know, white is better because white is surrounding the king. The king's got no legal moves. And then I'm going to say what I always say. I'm going to say, is there a move that attacks the king? Like, if I'm cornered by a bunch of bullies, but there's a force field and they can't punch me, am I in danger? Not really. I'm talking about my childhood, okay? So, in this position, there's no real threats, and all black has to do is play rook h4, and now it's not so clear who is going to get mated, right? So, and not to mention there's always things like knight c3 coming as well, and a2 is under pressure. So, there's no threats here. I mean, none of these things are creating any danger to the king, because black is defending all the squares. It is what it is. Yeah, sorry. And that was a missed chance for Anish in round 5. But in round 5, somebody who didn't miss an opportunity, spoiler alert, Mr. Ian Nepomniachtchi, who won his last few games with the white pieces and is showing tremendous form. He's playing very well. He's showing really good opening preparation and transition into middle games where he has a time advantage and he's playing with confidence. It seems like Nepo's the kind of guy to get a really good position and then just take it to the next level, like take it up a notch on his opponent. The game against Wang Hao was a Petrov, very very solid defense. Not going to talk a huge amount about the theory. Nepo goes for this kind of symmetrical position, and then here plays a move that he said in the presser after the game. This is a very unique idea, and I mentioned this in my Game of the Day recap video yesterday on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. I'm getting so much positive feedback on it. I'm so touched. I love you. He mentions, and I mentioned, excuse me, that when in doubt, just play h4. All right, this is what all the grandmasters are doing at this level. When in doubt, when you don't know what to do in a position, just push your h pawn, and then God will just lead you to the final destination. I should also mention that this pawn is not hanging because of the knight on d6. And the other idea of h4 is not even to play h5, h6. It's to play knight g5 and get this bishop. That's really h4 doesn't guarantee that you win the game, but it forces black to be a bit precise. Black really should have played queen d7, queen f5 here, but Jan mentioned that in this position it's different. Now these knights are like a bit x-rayed, and the queen has to stay guarding them. And after a couple of simplifications, we get to this position. So first things first, anytime you have two pieces opposite each other, you've got to remember that the queen is hanging if the knight moves. So if the knight goes to h6, it's check and you lose your queen. So you can either defend that by moving your king out of danger so that there's no check, or you can defend your queen. He does the opposite. He moves his king. h5 to prevent g6, and also in the future to push this pawn. So you would think that this position is a draw. And I remember pulling up the game on my phone and being like, okay, symmetrical pawn structure, queen and knight, so it's not bishop, bishop for knight or anything like that. And how do you evaluate this kind of a position? It all comes down to space and piece activity, and we can tell very quickly that it is white who is pressing. And we can tell that because white has all these infiltration ideas, and he's got moves like h6, which jeopardize the king's positioning in the corner of the board, potentially jeopardize the pawn structure. And if you'd like to infiltrate, you just first need to defend your knight. So you play g4. Chess is a very logical game. Now, some of you sitting at home might be like, well, I would never play g4 because it weakens my king. Why does it weaken your king again? Because you're pushing pawns in front of it? Again, I urge you to push a little deeper in your thought process. what does a weakened king even mean? It means that your opponent has attacking opportunities against your king, right? You've weakened your king's safety. How on earth is white gonna get his king attacked here? Queen e6, queen e1? Okay, and then I just move my king up, right? Especially with moves like queen e3, queen f3 to cover. It's not that bad. And here Wang Hao and Jan both said that they thought that a6 was a bit of a loss of tempo. So here Wang Hao said that it was better for him to start bringing the king toward the central file to get out of various tactical motifs on the back rank. He wanted to stay away from a move like h6 because it kind of irreparably damages your light squares. So if the knight ever gets to g6, it's going to be untouchable, and this pawn is going to be a target forever. So a6, and here Jan criticized his b3 move. He criticized it because even though it actually came out to be smart and support c4, he lost a couple of tactical opportunities on the queen side. There were certain variations where this queen on a3 would be patrolling the f8 square and hitting the king if it ever got there. And b3 took that away, although it does look like a very natural move, and to many, just, you know, chess fans around the world, they don't think that b3 is bad at all, because again, you're just trying to improve your position on both sides of the board. But obviously, I would play b3 because why not? You know, the alternative is just, you know, improving your position with moves like king g2 so that there's no back rank problems, and then, you know, if you ever transfer the queen like this, your king and the pawns can come up together. But queen e6, knight e3, and here Nepo finds a nice idea again, h6. We talked about this earlier. You wanna use this h-pawn to damage your opponent's structure. If he takes, then after queen h6, this is very, very dangerous for black. Queen f8 is coming in a second, and given these two pawn weaknesses and the fact that knight f5 and queen g7 can land at any moment, not right now, but just in the future, white has a very convincing advantage, which forces black to play g6, but g6 weakens the king as well, because the dark squares around the king are weakened, and the king is just stuck on the back rank. It's going to need a couple of moves to get back in the game. Not to mention the fact that even if the king does escape this way, the h7 pawn is always weak. So that's the thing about endgames, is that if you advance your pawn all the way in an endgame, it could be a target, but in many ways it does lock down the surrounding pawns. So now we get c4. So this was the sacrificial idea here from Jan. You cannot take, because after takes, there was just a very, very quiet move here. Yes, thank you, police car outside. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Not queen g3. It's not queen g3 because queen c1, king g2, queen takes h6. That's why. And this motif you've got to be very careful about anytime you let a pawn go wild like this. Is that it can be a target even from a very far distance. The move queen c1 shows why the queen is worth 9 points, you know? This is very nice. It is not g5. g5. Are you guys okay? g5? Are you settling for g5 because you get to stop mate like this? No, no, no. You need to have higher self-confidence. You're gonna lose if you play chess like this. Ah, you guys are saying g5 for white. Okay, got it. I apologize. That's why you have to play queen h2. You need to play queen h2. That maintains both of these threats, and this is over. Yes, I can give you a check, but there is nothing else. The queen cannot magically teleport to e4. So this is an easy win for white, this nice queen h2 move. And since you can't take on c4, now you have to come to terms with the fact that if you can't take, these pawns are coming. And even here, he didn't have to play king g8. There was probably still some moment to defend. But Jan, again, digging for initiative here. Queen h2 with ideas of c5 and d5. You guys are asking, why not queen e3? Probably because the threat of queen e8 is much more easily stopped with queen f7. So something like queen f4 is now met with king g8, and you're not actually going to be winning this because my king is now off the square. Very fine detail, you know, like nuance is that it's one square difference, but that's the beauty of the chessboard. That's why you play queen h2 and there's no way for the king to escape. If the king goes running after check, king f7, check, king, I don't know, let's say I want to go all the way escape. Then after this, this is promoting. There's no perpetual because of how the king is stuck. So queen h2 is simply winning. As far as the game went, he deflected the knight to b5, played queen b8. And even here, I think the position was holdable, but I don't remember exactly like what. I think it's queen e7, queen h8, king e6. I think this is what you're supposed to play, because if here f4, then the king gets to d7, which is such a small detail to realize. So you leave the queen on e7 so that the king can shuffle around the queen, which is like so ridiculous that he missed that. I mean, let's be real. There's 3,500 people watching right now. All of us would have found this. Every single person watching right now would have found queen e7, and it's honestly embarrassing that someone of Wang Hao's level... I'm joking. Okay, that's a joke. It's such a small detail. Like, how on earth do you tell the difference between these two moves? A king maneuver? That's like the last thing we're thinking about here, you know? Not to mention time trouble, but you know that this is coming. But I guess after f4, you just begin to realize how hopeless the position is. You know, we get here, and then after queen f7, queen c8, queen d7, a little bit of repetition. Jan finds queen d8 with the threat of mate, which is important, as well as the knight. Knight b5 would probably be just met with removing the guard tactic. Just removing the guard. You know, you want queen d6, and this knight covers it, so you attack the knight. And after queen d7, f5 check, deflection. So this is just a winning endgame. And Wang Hao resigned. So how did he win this position? Step 1. Play into your opponent's preparation and come up with a new idea. Step 2. Opponent makes a slight inaccuracy, already giving you a very pleasant position. Step 3. Capitalize on the time advantage and the positional unfamiliarity by your opponent. Step 4. Profit. Step 5. Lose 90% of profit value of your portfolio due to impending financial crisis. So from here, just a very, very nice and practical approach to the game by Mr. Nepomniachtchi, who continued to apply pressure despite, you know, the symmetrical pawn structure and material. He had a bit more activity, a bit more space, and he took that to, you know, to the next level. Which takes us to Nepo's game in round 6. Jan playing with the white pieces against Ding Liren. And in every tournament, which is a round robin, I mean, in every open tournament, it's a lot harder to do this, but I will tell you, I have some experience playing in round robins. My best friend, close friend, international master Alex Ostrovsky, shout out to you if you're ever going to watch this in the future. He plays a lot of round robins. He always tells me, round robins are weird because the way it works is that there are 1 or 2 players that always have a target on their back. It is very rare that a round robin finishes with everyone very closely packed together. There's always 1 or 2 people that just get it throughout the tournament. They just get the beating from everyone. They get 2 points out of 9, 2.5, 3 points. This is a 14-round round robin. It's a double round robin. So in every and before the event, everyone looked at Alekseenko. It's just true. I mean, if it's not the case, if you ask any of the players, they're all going to be very nice. They're going to be polite. No one's going to say, like, you know, yeah, you know, Alekseenko's a fake wild card. He's garbage. I'm gonna, you know I gotta beat him 2 times. I gotta beat him with white and with black. After 6 rounds, Alekseyenko's got 2 points. But Ding Liren with 2 out of 6. 2 out of 6 points. At the time of this game, he had 2 out of 5. Spoiler alert. But you could tell very early on that Ding is not in his peak form. He won a very, very nice game against Fabiano. But losing those first 2 games, now you start looking at Ding a little different. You start going, wait a second, this is not the guy. This is not the guy that didn't lose in 100 games. This is a different Ding. And Nepo's a confident guy. And everyone's talking about Nepo always starts hot and slows down. You know, Nepo plays on his mood. Well, look, I don't know about all that. But if those 2 things are true, he's playing on his mood right now. He's playing at a high level. And number 2, he's obviously very confident. He's rolling right now. Not that kind of rolling. All right, stop it. So, Jan sits down, but after the game, Jan actually said that he was feeling so poorly physically, he was contemplating making a quick draw, which is pretty crazy, actually. That's it would be insane if one of the players got sick. Now, I'm not going to analyze this game actually in ridiculous depth, because actually we already did that, sort of. It's on the Game of the Day recap video. But I will just show some of the most important moments and kind of talk about, you know, the implications of this tournament going forward and what this win means. You know, if you guys missed that game, it's on the Chess.com YouTube. It's called Nepo Sick, but you know, still gets the win over Ding. Someone on YouTube was very, very, maybe the mods can put that in the chat on YouTube and on Twitch. But you guys like that? Yeah, we're going to be doing more of those tomorrow around 7. We'll be doing another one. All you've got to know about this game is that Jan did not repeat the line that Grischuk played against Ding. Rookie 1 H3, the anti-martial. He played a different anti-martial, which is D3. And then chose this setup. And this has been played before. The intricacies of the Rue Lopez are beyond my pay grade. If Chess.com bumped me about 40%, I think I would do it at a minimum to take you through the different move orders. But we don't need to do that. You guys don't even care about it anyway. And besides, all of these super grandmasters are making the mistake of not playing the Vienna Gambit. Exclamation point E4. The true fans will know what I'm talking about. This setup in the Rue Lopez is a setup where you play Bishop B3, Knight C3, Bishop G5. You try to take the knight on F6, and you try to put the knight on D5. That is the idea. That is the entire idea, and we see it played right here. Now, unlike Mr. Alexander Grischuk, who knows the opening, but still spends 90% of his time getting there, Ian Nepomniachtchi spends 1% of his time getting there, and then detonates a novelty on his opponent, and then continues to build his time advantage, and then wins the game. That's the difference. So this position has been played before by Ding Liren. 2 times, actually. He's played it against MVL, and if I'm not mistaken, he also played this position against Carlsen. And, you know, Magnus is a slightly better player than... Are we having some problems? Alrighty, to avoid painful silence, I decided to go to the image slideshow, so I wouldn't sit here looking around awkwardly. I can only do so much talking to myself. We're back. That was a Twitch thing. That was not an internet thing. Just so we're fully aware. So Ding has had this position in the past, and as I mentioned yesterday in that recap video, really go check it out. Like, my ego needs stroking, and the amount of YouTube likes it gets is like really the only thing I care about. Thanks. Also comment in the chat and compliment me. Anyway, there is a risk when you play into a position that your opponent has played in the past. Okay, the risk is as follows. I talked about this in that video. It's either that they're very familiar with it, and they've reviewed it recently, and there's no way you're going to catch them with a surprise, or they've had success with that line in the past, so they haven't reviewed it in a while, because they're just confident in it. That does happen. And we're seeing that right now with Ding. A little bit. We're seeing him just get a little bit outplayed in some of these e4, e5s. It's really weird. I don't know, like, I don't know why that's the case. I'm not, you know, I'm not ready to make any hot takes about Ding Liren, but, he doesn't seem to be in good form right now, which is crazy. It's just very strange. So, the novelty came after the move a5, and here Jan played rook b2, which is not like a ridiculous, you know, genius move. His idea is just to play like this, support his pawn, avoid a trade of rooks. And after bishop d8, he mentioned in this position that he thinks that you know, this position is basically low risk and just advantageous for white. So knight d4, takes, queen c2, rook e8, g3. You know, you cannot just blindly expand on your opponent, because look, those of you in the chat that are curious how the chess thought process is supposed to work, let's say you're like, well, I can play f4 here, and I can play f5, and then I can play f6, and I get a really nice, you know, kingside attack. Maybe transfer my queen over there. How do you come up with a move for black against f4? This is how you do it. You go, can he attack anything? Does he have any checks? Can he take anything? That really should be first. Can he check me? No. Can he take anything? Yeah, he could take this, but then I can take back, or even like that. That looks okay. And can he attack anything? Yes. He can attack the knight with c6, and then you very quickly realize that the knight is trapped because you cannot play f4. So you can't just be thinking about your own plans, because f4, f5, f6 is a great plan. If only it could work, right? It doesn't work, though. So Jan plays g3, because he wants to just have his options open for the future. To play f4 is just kind of a generally good improving move. bc4, queen c4, c6, and you have to bring the knight back because there's no reason to allow this trade. And right around here, yesterday, on that same recap video I'm telling you about, now I sound like a TikTok meme, White's got basically a risk-free position where you can continue to make progress at no risk, at no cost, I should say. I said risk already. No cost. Like, you know, these pawns are targets, and not to mention that if this b pawn gets traded with the c pawn, these guys are isolated. They're going to be self-isolated. Ah, current events jokes. Ding goes for d5, takes, and here we see again. What should grandmasters do when they don't know what to do, guys? You don't know if you should be playing on the queen side. There's nothing to play for in the center. Black played. Oh yeah, you guys can't talk. h5. When in doubt, just play h5, you know? Maybe good stuff will happen. So what I found funny here was that Jan was so inspired by this pawn moving that he decided to move his own pawn. So Ding decided to move his own pawn. So Jan decided to move his own pawn. So Ding decided to move his own pawn. These moves are made like scholastic students at a tournament. You know, you You know, you could probably even play b7 if you really want. So he moves his pawn all the way here, and he is actually creating a little bit of counterplay. He does have some actual ideas. You know, the light squares near the king are a little bit damaged. Maybe it was better for him to keep his pawn here to kind of maintain. Wow, that is those arrows do not no. To maintain, you know, tension among the pawns. That sounded like a tennis match or an adult film. Yes. Fair. So king h1, because, you know, moving your king to the corner is a good move. Jan did not learn the lesson from the Wang Hao game that keeping a king opposite a pawn like this is dangerous, but obviously in this position it actually is not dangerous. He has knight g1 coming. After this, rook b1, bishop d8. This is Ding's idea. He tries to play like this. And I found something so funny in Ding Liren's post-game press conference. He said he wanted to keep this rook on the a file for hopes of back rank checkmate. There's some tactics where, like, you know, the rook and the queen come off the back rank and you have rook a1. It's just such an interesting position. Yeah, this is Alekhine's gun. I don't know if the queen has to be at the back, but whatever. Jan goes now for simplification, because when you're winning, you've got two ways to win. I talk about this all the time. You can either win by starting an attack on your opponent, or you can win by simplifying and just you know, going for a position where you have a winning endgame. That's generally good practice. So queen g4, and then there's queen e4, queen f3, and threats here. And now is the moment I once again mentioned in that really brilliant recap video, that here queen e8 was the engine's preference to go for this. And, you know, you can't take on b6 because of rook a1, rook g1, and queen d1 is mate. But if you just don't take the free bishop like a degenerate and play the move f3, then you've got a perfectly nice position. So queen is targeted, the queen guards this pawn, and the engine prefers to take the pawn closer to the king rather than these pawns, so that you know, you've always got little tactical opportunities, and queen is stuck. Can't really get to your king anymore. Jan thought for a little bit and played the slightly suboptimal move. And then Ding plays rook a5 with the intention of deflecting the queen away like this. And here, once again, what you should play is f3, going for this endgame after rook b7, knight f4, rook d6, knight h3, rook b6, rook b6, rook b6, rook b6, bishop b6. This endgame is simply winning. This is simply winning for white because of how weak this pawn is, and the king is getting to e4. So, like I said, I know I said a lot of moves there in a row, but all it is black going after this pawn. So a lot of rook b6s. So no, that, I mean, I know I said a lot of moves in a row, guys, but I didn't say anything complicated. Black is just literally going for the pawn. That's, you know, a lot of stuff is happening on b6. Fly like a b6. But here, Jan did not play f3, and he played queen c6, obviously seeing that rook c5 deflecting again will be met with queen e8. And that was Ding's idea. But here, Ding missed a brilliant freaking move. And it's not just a brilliant move, it's a brilliant idea. The engine doesn't even see it right now, because it's not on a high enough depth. Here, rook takes b6 was saving the game. You know, you overprotect the pawn so much, you almost forget that it can be taken. You know, story of overprotective parents. So the point here is that rook takes b6, bishop takes b6, excuse me, rook takes b6, queen takes e2, not taking back the bishop, not taking back the rook, excuse me, taking the knight on e2, allows this with a pin, and check is coming. And it's impossible to defend, because if you play something like queen e7, I just play queen c8, rook d5, I mean, I can do a lot of stuff, but first of all, I can take this pawn. White is just easily winning. So you allow rook b8, right? And just look at how scary this looks from black's perspective. you're allowing the check to come in, and if you just, I don't know, play something like queen f2 with the intention of playing, you know, rook a2 and mating, there is this check, you're gonna lose, okay? So that doesn't work. You get to this position, you go, I got nothing. But sometimes in chess, you can see a threat and go, so what? Now see, the problem you guys make is you don't see the threat. You gotta start seeing the threat, stopping the threat. But once you get to a really high level, like in any sport, you can see that's like, you know, an attack is coming and you let it happen. And then you realize, wait a second, let me just make one more threat. Rook e5, with the idea to play queen e1. Okay? You allow this to be, oh, well, that would be tragic. You allow this to be taken in king h7, and then you realize, how do I stop queen e1? Well, the best thing for black to do is to, for white to do is to sacrifice the rook, then give this check, and we saw this in the Wang Hao game as well, why you need to play a certain queen move, because this is a check, which comes with winning this pawn, and there is no back rank mate anymore. And it's a draw, because black is going to win the d3 pawn. Queen rook in 3 versus queen rook in 3 will be a draw. Right? So, that's, rook h8 is saving the game. But let's say you're a greedy son of a gun, and you say, I'm not going to do that. Why the hell would I give him my rook? I'm not an idiot. I'm just going to play rook g1. This guy really thinks he's got something on me. So now black takes the pawn, because there's no other way to make progress. And we realize that between the threat of rook e2, rook e1, and the lingering problem on this diagonal, right? The queen has to stay here. That you have to now play rook h8. Because if you don't, queen a8, trying to go for rook here, is met with rook e1. Not rook e2. Not rook e2. If you play rook e2, then you get hit with this, this, and this. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Well, not bye-bye, because there is still rook e1 by some sort of miracle. This is so ridiculous that this still can happen. You can give all the checks you want, but now there are no more checks. And now something like this can happen. And despite being up a rook, you have to settle for a draw. So you can still save the game. But if you are so persistent that you don't think that you're losing, and rook e1 comes and you're like, it's like a real life bruh moment, you know? Sit there like, how did I just lose? I'm up a rook. You know who is the MVP of this position? This pawn. If we take this a little bit back to the pawn thrusts, you know, both players gyrating and whatnot, Ding Liren ran out of things to do, so he pushed the pawn all the way to h3, and we could have seen a real-life moment where that pawn push paid off in full. This brilliant move, rook takes b6, allowing all these crazy things to happen. But that didn't happen. It's like, when I'm analyzing games, I teach kids who are like 7 and 8 years old, and those that are beginners, you know, will start analyzing a variation, and then they'll just at one point hit me with, "Did this really happen?" And I'm like, Timmy, I don't know why that's just the default name for a poor chess player who's like 7 years old. I was like, Timmy, we're analyzing your game from your recent tournament. How do you not know what happened in the game? And I say, no, you know, we're analyzing things that didn't happen so we can learn about how to handle certain positions. Oh! Okay. I'm like analyzing all these beautiful things and they're just like, did this happen? Jeez. No, man, no! No! Anyway. Rook c5 happened. And after queen e8, king h7, Ding Liren very quickly realized after knight g1 that he's got nothing. So he sacrificed the piece. And here, you know, yesterday I mentioned that Ding is one move too slow. Queen f3 is mate, rook takes knight, and queen d1 is mate. And here white has to force a simplification of the queens. And that's that. And here, a fancy move, f3. Because after rook takes, knight takes, you cannot take the second pawn because knight g5 is a fork. And so Ding, rather than even playing on, thought for a little bit on f3 and then resigned. And then people were making comments in the chat that he resigned because Jan was coughing, and then Jan also coughed at the press conference, and Jan moves to +3 with this win. It's a huge win for him. A huge win. I think he's close to his highest rating ever, but I don't actually know that in a factual way. I think so, but he must be very close. I don't think Jan has ever been 2,800. So, big win for him, and he's got the day to rest today in his room because he's probably not allowed to leave the hotel, and if he does, he'll be wearing a face mask. But he and Grischuk have been very vocal about how, you know, how the atmosphere is around. Everyone's in a mask. Everyone's very protective of their own health, of you know, social distancing. You can't really social distance at the board. I don't know if you guys saw, there was an article about the chess championship going on, and instead of focusing on, you know, the candidates element, they were just like, it's the only sporting event going on right now, like, during Corona. Because, like, all these places have to, you know, be sensationalist. And they're not wrong. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying that the only way you're going to get clicks nowadays is if you just mention, you know, problems. And so Grischuk has said that the playing condition is they're not, you know, they're not great. And I obviously want the tournament to continue, but only if the players are healthy. I'm a bit selfish. So all of us wish the players the best of health, okay? If there's a world where it all continues and no one gets sick, of course, sure. It's always going to be kind of a very risky decision to take. Yes, I still want an interview with Grischuk as it pertains to water in the toilets. Those of you know from the last candidates, when Grischuk was interviewed about the playing conditions, and he said that the playing conditions are absolutely terrible. There is no even water in the toilet. Now, he did not mean in the actual toilet. He meant in the sink. I think he meant in the sink, but I might be wrong. I think maybe he meant like in the physical toilet. I don't know. I didn't ask him. The one final thing that we will touch on today for the memes is Anish Giri, who yesterday played against Kirill Alekseenko, and after 98 moves, got his first ever win at the candidates. Now, I will just say this: Kirill Alekseenko snatched defeat from the jaws of a draw. I'm not gonna focus on the game, you know, a whole amount. This was the end game for a while, and you know, White was defending, and he was defending very well, and you know, he sacrificed the pawn for some initiative, and this position was very difficult to play for Black, so he gave a pawn back to get some active play, and he was up a pawn, then it was equal again, and then he won a completely symmetrical position. Queen and knight, 3 pawns each, Black a little bit more active than his opponent, going for this endgame. And people were saying that, I believe it was Carlsen Anand was an endgame of a very similar, nature. And, you know, I'm not going to talk a lot about how to win this. It's a combination of bringing your pawns up in the right way, making sure that they're all playing together, not simplifying too quickly, because if you trade one of these pawns, you might actually kill your chances of winning. Sometimes there's going to be moments where, you know, you can be down 2 pawns by White, but because they're doubled, that you could just pick them up very quickly. More on that later. You guys would probably lose this with Black, as far as I'm concerned, having the extra pawn. So rather than take you through the, you know, deep intricacies of a knight endgame, let's just see how Anish tried to make progress. Both players had a bit of time trouble here. So we have this position. You're goddamn right I would lose this, and I'm proud of it. Somebody in the chat says, I'm sure if you were in this tournament, you would snatch many defeats in it. Yes, thank you. That is a very hot take, that the 3,000th ranked player in the world would lose a lot of games to players in the top 10. You are a genius, sir, and I hope that you continue to bring good insight to Chess.com streams. So, knight h3, knight e4, knight g1, knight d3, king d3. Again, it's a combination of piece activity and staying patient with your pawns. Because again, if you simplify a little bit too quickly, you're just going to make a draw. Like, white is going to have a moment where he can trade the pawns and then bring the king up. More on that in just a moment. So, king g2, knight d2, king f2, king e4. A little triangulation action there we see from Giri, getting the king to e4. Knight e2, knight b1. This is Anish thinking that if he brings his knight to the original starting square of the opponent's knight, that the knight can transform. He's basically advocating for the deep state of chess to change the rules. That if you promote your knight to the home square of the enemy knight, that your knight can actually evolve. More, but we'll see if that happens. So the outside pawn break is another idea that we're about to see. And this idea is used to get the pawn away, win this pawn, take the opposition, and just go directly for that pawn. So, knight h3, king f5 is trying to get into g4. Takes, and that's exactly what we have. But here, a very nice defensive resource from Alekseenko. He plays f5. He sacrifices the pawn back. And now, if the king were to take, which is not what happened in the game, then he would bring the king up to g3, defending this pawn, have an active king, and everything would be good. Right? Somebody just said, I feel like I'm in a church service. Thank you, Pastor Rozman. That might be one of the worst comments I've ever received as a human being. King e3, instead, Anish takes with the pawn. King e3 doubles his pawns, but this is simply a draw. The knight is hanging, and he gives it away. But the problem here is that king f4, and like I said, you just Pac-Man these pawns. King takes, and we're out of there. It's a draw. Anish Giri shakes hands. Took him 88 moves, but he got to the desired result for him. But plot twists awaited. Knight c3, knight f2. And here Dubov was saying king g3 is too risky because h5. And I was like, wait, seriously, who's going to stop this pawn? So, knight d5, king d4, knight f4, h6, king f2, h7, knight g6, king d5, f4, king e4, well, excuse me, I said king e4 and I played the king to e6, king here, f3, king f5, knight h8, king f6, king e2, king g7, f2, king g7, king h8, f1, king g8. Okay, everybody got that? Right, so there was different people suggesting that this was too risky, and I think it was Dubov who was like, "Hey, way too risky to play King G3." He said it, you know, he was like, "No, but I mean, okay, I can't do a good Dubov. I need to work on my Dubov impression." But another very easy draw here to try to get to f4 is just to play knight h1. Just knight h1. And again, if the king goes after the knight, you just play king f4 and you snatch these pawns up. If the king goes back, you give this check. Now, I'm not saying that I would find knight h1. Chat member did make it very clear that I also would lose these games. I mean, I probably would have... I'd probably play knight g4 thinking I can attack this pawn and, you know, forgetting that I can lose mine or something. But it is a very easy draw after knight h1. The king's just got nothing to do. Again, the king needs to stay on these two squares to prevent king f4 from happening. If you take the pawn or go after the knight, I play king f4. It's honestly not insanely complicated. Like, it really isn't. And you guys have to remember that, serious note, when people analyzing these games say that it's an easy draw, that's not a simultaneous insult of the players for missing the move knight h1. Like, everybody thinks that. Like, yeah, he should have just done that. It's, you know, it's pretty trivial after knight h1. I don't know what he overlooked. And here, Kirill Alekseenko played knight d3, which just drew a collective gasp from the world, because after knight d5 check, f4 is completely covered, and h4 is going to be lost. And the pawn gets to promote, because it's got backup. So one of these pawns is going to promote, and we saw very quickly that this very nice idea, knight f4, going for a trade of the knights, but the king is shouldered away from the pawns, and this king is right here. This is just over. Yeah, so he lost the pawn, and there is just simply no way for him to win either of these pawns now. So knight g5, king f1, f3, but here Kirill just resigned. So yeah, very, very long game. It took 100 moves and a tremendous blunder. But obviously, I mean, listen, in chess, you earn your luck. Chess, according to law, is considered a game of skill. But people say, you know, is there luck in chess? I think you earn it. That's what I always say. I think you earn your luck. You know, Anish played 98 moves and tried to continuously create problems from his opponent. He got them down to the last minute of time. And he got his first win ever in the candidates. We know that the last candidates he played is where all the memes were born. Anish was supremely solid. And now he gets a win. He was beating FIDE. Anish is playing good games. The good is not an adjective. Like, you can't say it like that. Sorry. He's just playing well. And despite losing a couple of games early on, his preparation has looked pretty solid. So he wins a couple of games in this second half of the tournament. He's going to have plenty of opportunities to catch the leaders. Now, let's talk about just the tournament a little bit in general. Let's talk about what's upcoming for round number 7. Here are the matchups. First, we are going to start in the dungeon. Ding Liren versus Alekseenko. World number 3 versus world number 39. Who's going to win this game? And why is it the dungeon? Well, surprisingly, these are the two lowest players. They both have 2 out of 6. Ding Liren's got the white pieces. Listen, Ding's got to win this game. He's just got to win this game. That's all it is. If he doesn't, I don't know what to say. What are we going to get? We'll probably get a Catalan from Ding. Ding's a world-class Catalan practitioner. But let's not forget, the Catalan is I don't want to say like solved, but Black has so many weapons at his disposal to get a perfectly reasonable position. I don't know what Ding will play. Maybe Ding will actually go for e4 or c4 just to maybe hope for some sort of non-Catalan, you know, c4, e5, kind of unbalanced position like he had early in the games, in the tournament, I should say. So maybe we'll get that. Let's now move on to Caruana versus Wang Hao, a matchup of 2 players in the 3-point score group. Both of these guys having decent events. Both of these guys, you know, only they're obviously balanced. They have 1 win, 1 loss each. Caruana's got to win this game, I think. I think you know in chess, obviously there's a lot more games to be played still. There's 8 more games to go. But Caruana's got the white pieces against Wang Hao. Why not get a win? This is the moment right now to beat Wang Hao, to send Wang Hao to a 2-game losing streak, start, you know, killing the narrative of him as an underdog in this tournament. The next 3 games will determine really what's going to happen at the end, I think. Unless more surprises await us, like the tournament getting paused, or Ding Liren winning 17 games in a row or something. Definitely, yeah, he's got to win it. He's got to win it, in my opinion. So, then we've got our 2 most intriguing matchups of the round. Anish Giri versus Grischuk. And just as it so happens, another matchup between 2 players that have 3 out of 6. I had a bet with my friend. My friend thinks that Giri's going to win this game. That's a pretty bold take. Because think about that. That would mean that Anish has been winning in 3 straight games. He was beating FIDE. Let's not forget. He was beating FIDE. He could have beaten FIDE. He beat Alekseenko. And if he beats Grischuk? Hello, Giri. I gotta take back my hot take then. But this is gonna be a big moment from Giri. I don't know what we're gonna get from Anish. Is Anish gonna play solid? Is he gonna go for like a Catalan or, you know, a Queen's Gambit? Are we gonna get like a Nimso? Are we gonna get a C4? We're not gonna get E4. Highly doubt that Giri plays E4 against Grischuk. But he might, because he might want to go for a Berlin, which is very low risk position, you know, get Grischuk into a deep time trouble, see what happens. I don't know. It's very tough to predict their openings. I would predict maybe D4, but after that, will we get like a Nimso? And if we get a Nimso, what kind of an... It might be Rogozin, because... actually, Grischuk does like to play Rogozin, which is Queen's Gambit declined with Bishop B4 very early. So, the last game, and as it will so happen, the halfway moment of this tournament, round 7, is the matchup between none other than Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, the stoic Frenchman, versus the hobo headshot Ian Nepomniachtchi. This is once again a travesty of a picture that they picked for Jan, who looks like he hasn't slept in weeks, and quite frankly looks like he's under the influence. So once again, I implore the graphics team to give me a better headshot to work with. Both guys 29 years old. Ian Nepomniachtchi 4.5 out of 6. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave 3.5 out of 6. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave with the white pieces. It is wholeheartedly predictable that we are going to get E4, and what will Jan play? That's the big question. Unless MVL surprises the world and doesn't play E4, because when you get MVL, you kind of know what you're getting. If MVL wins this game, it's a tied match. 4.5 apiece, and by match I mean it's just, the two of them are the front runners of the tournament. So, huge game, and no coincidence. And do you know what this means? This means that in round 14, if I'm not mistaken, that this is going to be the matchup once again. No, I think I am mistaken. I think the way the pairing system works... When do they play each other again? Let me look at this moving forward. 11, 12, 13. They play each other in 13, not 14. So they play each other in the penultimate round. It's going to be Nepo versus MVL. I thought that it would cycle through again. But they play each other toward the end of the tournament, which is going to be really big, because if they continue their dominant runs, then it's fantastic. But we're going to get to see them play one more time, and Jan will have the white pieces. Is it still too early to tell who's going to be the winner? Yes. I think these next 3 rounds are going to really lock in who's in peak form and who's not, who's the favorite, and who we can place our bets on. Let me know what you guys think. Before I sign off here, I'm happy to answer any of your questions. Once again, Game of the Day recap videos right after the most exciting game of any given round will be available on our YouTube page, so if you're not subscribed there, go check it out. Those of you in the YouTube chat already have an advantage. I did an in-depth look yesterday at Game of the Day. Danny Wrench did a few of the preceding rounds. You can catch us on all of our social media. We're obviously live streaming on Chess TV to a bunch of different platforms, and we've got over 5,000 of you joining us right now, so... Some folks said that, bring back Naroditsky. He will be back. I do the rest day and the Game of the Day stuff. We've got Super Grandmasters covering, as well as Daniel Naroditsky, who is not, in my heart, is a Super Grandmaster, but he is a 2600 level GM, which is not considered a Super Grandmaster. But titles are like, so, you know. I'm rooting for... Who am I rooting for? I'm not rooting for anybody. But I think, if anyone... I'm rooting for MVL. I'm biased. I just wanted to see... Okay. We've got a question in the chat. ¿Dónde está la leche? Where is the milk? I hope I'm not getting memed on. I truly do not know where the milk is. I finished I had some in the fridge, but I ate cereal this morning, so... And I poured the cereal first, and let me just tell you this. If you don't pour the cereal before the milk, I mean, I don't even know what to do with you, frankly speaking. Alrighty. I am not getting any particularly good questions here. Anyway, guys, those of you on Twitch, I do have my own channel, if you don't know already, but I believe that 90% of you already do know that. You can follow me there, make sure you know when I'm live, and if you're watching on YouTube, the second best place to catch all chess content besides the Chess.com YouTube channel, the Gotham Chess YouTube channel. So you can subscribe on there. We will be rating Alexandra Samaganova, who, if I'm not mistaken, is from Kyrgyzstan. She's I believe some sort of champion in Kyrgyzstan. And we will be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, bright and early, for continued coverage of the FIDE Candidates 2020. Again, be safe, be healthy. Wishing that for you and all your families, even the trolls. We love you. We hope everybody, all your relatives and friends stay healthy. Keep yourself isolated. And stop going to the beach, for God's sake. We'll see you tomorrow.